Got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Welcome to episode 5 of Coordinated Fire, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast where not even we apologize for walking into Jabba's palace unannounced. How's it going, guys?
That sounds very rude. We weren't invited.
I don't care. I'm busting in the place. Let's go. Cause a ruckus. Where's Jabba at?
I want to thank my co-host here for being patient, as I did screw up that intro 3 times. Let's go.
We are going to tell the people that we did
And then
it
you didn't
3
save
times over.
it. You didn't save it. I'm disappointed in you.
How we doing, guys?
Doing good.
The early days of podcasting, getting our lumps in.
I nailed it 4 times in a row. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to my turn.
Yeah.
I just want to do an early thank you. Since we announced the contest last week, we've had a ton of great engagement in the Discord. So thank you everyone for jumping in, sharing those mace lists. There's been some creative ones. There's been some ones that I want to put on a table.
And there was also a reluctant Empire player who also put in a mace list. And that was hilarious.
I love when people are
out
coming
there.
out of
That's
faction.
right. There are Empire players out there still. A few of us left.
It turns out it's still all really good.
There's a lot of American Empire players from what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And maybe even I am being seduced by the dark side.
I do have some stuff for you this week.
Over to some games played, which is a little light this week. So Titus, I will throw it over to you because I'm pretty sure you're the only one that got a game in this week.
Yeah, I had a game against Josh Pound. We were the only ones out to Thursday night this week. It was pretty quiet. I took Mace with Obi-2 and the Arfs, and then Kit Fisto with Nadar and Phil's clones. Obi-2 is a menace. I guess I should say what Josh played. Josh had the Inquisitors. He had Grand Inquisitor with Third Sister, Fourth Sister, Maul, Savage, and Fifth Brother.
All dual lightsabers.
Yep,
Okay.
all dual lightsabers. It was great. Like I said, Obi-2 is a menace. He just turns off attacks near him with the mind trick, which it's not a full turn off now, but a disarm is still ridiculously debilitating. Units live and die off their expertise. And we've seen that time and again. Being able to just give a disarm on demand is really good. Especially when you have Mace, you have pretty much as much force as you want. We didn't go very long. It went to struggle 2, and he just wasn't able to leverage any of his activations against me. Because with Grand Inquisitor, you kind of want to wound things, and when you're only doing 3 to 4 damage per attack because you keep getting disarmed, it's obnoxious.
That is a lot of defensive tech into a melee list that needs to kill.
Yeah, because you don't want to go near Mace. You don't want to go near Obi-2. So you kind of get funneled to the other side of the board.
It is also a waste of time. If people are engaging Nadar, it's doing exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly. Like it's right.
And what was the Maul side again?
Maul, Savage, and Fifth Brother. So it was very tanky.
Yeah. Double single support seems tough as well.
Yeah.
Was
Like, it was
Maul
fun.
able to make any sort of plays or disrupt anything?
He pulled Mace off, like, out of engagement. So he pulled him off the bubble.
Okay. Yeah.
Pulled him off a point. But he got pushed off fairly quickly and then kind of sat there the rest of the game because I pinned him and he just never came back from that. Yeah, it wasn't a super noteworthy game. It was just I had a really defensive list and he had an all melee list and it did not go in his favor.
Yeah, kind of oil and water situation.
Yeah, like, that's your perfect matchup. And to be clear, that wasn't planned
No.
into what Josh was playing.
No, we're actually scheduled for our Peterborough Shatterpoint League, and we specifically came out on Thursday and said we're not going to use this as our league game because we're both kind of just testing things out. We're going to have a serious game this coming week, so we'll let you know how that goes.
Very excited for the league to get
Yeah, I think like, again, against melee heavy and lists that require melee characters to get up close, Obi-2 seems really, really great. And it's very interesting. There's been a lot of conflicting opinions about Obi-2 overall the last week or so.
I honestly, I feel like his mind trick in certain matchups, most matchups I'd say, was actually a buff because the old mind trick was rather situational. There was a lot of ways to set it up so your opponent didn't want to use it, be it wasting force or just he was in a bad position, that kind of stuff. Whereas now, it being one force, you can afford to just spam that. And over time, it's more of a benefit than the old mind trick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I look at the changes, looking at a similar rebalance that like Django got. And I think Django's new Not So Fast is a more regularly relevant ability than the old one was. But what it really took away was the feel bad moment. And I think I see something really similar with Obi with Mind Trick. I would not say that the new ability is worse. You get a larger range. It does have to be the enemy character now, which means it has counterplay, which I think is healthy. But a disarm really takes away the potency of an attack. Like, the inconvenient thing about putting the disarm condition on someone is that they have to figure out a way to get rid of it before they go to attack something. That is typically the actions you take when you're disarmed is, how do I heal this? Can I take a recover action? Or can I do something on my turn that isn't attacking to get around this disarm? When disarm's forced upon you during your attack, and this is I believe the only case where that can happen, it takes that attack from this was my plan for the turn to let's see how the dice go. And a lot of units really rely on their expertise to get anywhere valuable down their tree.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot of OBT in different places. And he's a very versatile unit that can really fit anywhere. And anywhere that has the force to spend, a one force ability is a lot more palatable than the two that the old Mind Trick costs, where you'd have to build a list specifically to be able to pay for this ability.
Yeah, and that would be my comment too, is that I think the disarm on demand is, like you said, Kyle, is much more versatile, and it screws up the plans of a turn overall. And my hot take, and I said this very, very early on with the original Mind Trick, was that OB2 was being, in my opinion, taken by players who were very experienced, understood positioning, and we're using Mind Trick as more of just a gotcha move, right? So what I'm hearing from experienced players is that it was a downgrade and that the old Mind Trick was better, but I think overall the new Mind Trick is better for players of all skill sets, if that makes sense.
It took away the gotcha moment. It took away this, you can't do the thing, whether it was a revenge attack, whether it was a revenge attack just turning off, or this bubble on 1 to 2 objectives that you were kind of hovering around of saying, do something. And it wasn't a time where you could be interactive. It was a bit of unless you could displace Obi, it was a feel bad moment. And we saw that change with Obi. We saw that change with Django and Not So Fast, of just taking away these moments that feel uninteractive, that are feel bad moments for the opponent, and turning them into abilities that, again, I think are generally more useful. And I think we're going to see OB2 evolve a bit after. I know, again, Titus, you got to test him. I've gotten him in with a game now, and there's something special there.
Yeah, like he went from a very high potential, high cost unit to something that just gets a lot more value over time. And I think the value over time is the relevant thing. He's just way easier to trigger now.
And there's a cost to that too. His own activations are not going to be particularly strong without that Vader by his side now.
For sure. I think he has a great place in a premier list as a counter pick, honestly, is where I'd rate him. He's very good against specific lists and specific missions, and maybe not as good against other things, which I think is healthy.
But we are in a situation meta right now where there's a lot of Sabotage Showdown, which he likes to see, and there's a lot of melee lists, which is what he's going to like to see across.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the meta,
so we had a couple events happen this weekend. Nothing local for us, but the first one we're going to want to touch on here is the Atlantic City Open. Anything standing out for you guys in terms of takeaways from this one?
From the Atlantic City Open.
The rise of Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I like this. Paired with Grand Inquisitor. Obviously, we see Scott, aka Evil Houdini, taking the event again, going just absolutely perfect. This guy does not lose games to Shatterpoint anymore. Really, really love this. We have Grand Inquisitor, Fallen Jedi, Third Sister, Fifth Brother, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Stormtrooper Sergeant, and Dark Troopers. I think this might be the new way to play with Thrawn. And this might be the new control list. I asked Scott after the event, hey, why Dark Troopers over Death Troopers? And he said he just kind of wanted to play it how he had been playing it. Coordinated fire strain is still great, and not being able to be pushed as well too when there's a whole bunch of Jedi that love to force push. It makes sense. And you've got that great force refresh with Grand Inquisitor, third sister and fifth brother are a great duo. A lot of control elements there. And again, playing it on Never Tell Me the Odds. I think that's the big factor here, particularly when we're seeing a very Galactic Republic heavy meta right now.
100%. Looking at, we talked about Thrawn and list building in a recent episode. These are some unit choices that we talked about, and I'm still very high on fifth brother. With Thrawn, if you're taking one Inquisitor, that is still the one. That it is a unit. If you're able to move around, it's just so hard to deal with. And Dark Troopers, yes, they took a bit of a hit. I still think they're absolutely incredible. They're still tanky, maybe not as much as they were, but in a reasonable way. But a few really good things about them. One is that immunity for the force pushes, the force repulse, which we're seeing a lot of in the meta. But the other one is immunity pin. And with Republic stocks going up, there is just a lot of units in the meta that are going to rely on pin for some additional damage on the clone attack trees. They're going to rely 12th, I think, are the go-to pick for a clone unit now with coordinated fire pin. And it just, not being able to be pushed, not being able to pin, still makes them really good counter Republic unit.
So wish I had that one more health. And the other, I'll take my Empire moment here. Grand Moff Eric running a very interesting Empire premier list. Grand Inquisitor, third sister, fourth. I had Thrawn with Boba Fett on contract, ISBs, Moff Gideon, Death Trooper Escort, fifth brother, Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter, Stormtrooper Sergeant with Dark Troopers on shifting priorities. So a different configuration with Thrawn, Boba Fett, and ISB agents.
Yeah, so this was run as, just looking through Eric's list, this was run as a 2x2.
Yes, it
so
was.
He played Jedi Hunter and Grand Inquisitor, and then Thrawn, Moff. Now, this is a bit different than some ways that I've seen you run Thrawn, Moff. Sean, what do you...
Yeah, when I was first on Thrawn Moff, if you remember, I was playing Boba Fett because that was Jason, aka Prometheus, out of Australia. That's the way he was playing it, and that was more for when we were seeing a ton of Kanan in with the Inferno Squad Kanan previous meta. Not something that I really got on myself, but maybe he's finding success with the pin and disarm with the with the wire from Boba Fett. Slap that on Anakin, slap that on me, slap that on Cam. That's a bad time for those three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Scott and Grand Moff Eric actually played round 1 in the top cut here with a Thrawn off.
Nice.
Thrawn off.
Yeah, it was Thrawn Grand Inquisitor
tricky.
against Thrawn Moff. I'd never tell me the odds.
Yeah, I said it before. I'll say it again. I think, again, these Thrawn lists are the best thing you can play on Never Tell Me the Odds without an infiltrate unit. That's kind of my big statement there.
So
Awesome.
Another thing I would like to shout out.
Yeah.
We saw Hondo at the top table in the final match.
Yeah, we did.
Which is phenomenal. I really like the list, too. It was Hondo with Dengar, Lando, and R2. And I believe he played with Leia. Yes, he did. So it was Princess Leia, Charming to the Last, Luke Skywalker, Daring Hero, and Han and Chewie in it for the money. Giving extra dice to Han and Chewie, giving extra dice to Lando and R2, it's a real good combo, and having Hondo in that era now makes it possible. It's a great list. Would love to try it out sometime.
Yeah, I think overall it's a pretty similar list to the Leia Mando list that we've seen a lot of with a few swap outs. I do think, it adds, having Hondo there adds a bit of movement. Being able to move Dengar around is a really valuable thing. So I can definitely see that shining there. And again, we've got a good amount of scoundrels in here to take advantage of Hondo's identity.
Like, just giving extra dice to Lando and R2, their expertise is garbage, but their tree is quite good. So getting to add that on is so nice.
And extra dice for Dengar and extra dice for Han and Chewie. And no one's complaining there.
No,
that's awesome. I've I think, we'll end up doing a Hondo episode eventually, but I think, Rebel lists in general are going to be his best place where he currently stands with the eras opening up. Titus, I was going to ask you, looking at the other half of Scott's list, this seems right up your alley. So what is this list doing? What are we seeing here?
So it's Cad Bane with Jedi Master Shaak Ti and the Weequay Pirates, and then Princess Leia, Charming to the Last, with Obi-2 and Rebel Commandos. I mean, it just does. I honestly have no idea.
So speaking to Scott, speaking to Scott's post event, this was the list that he took specifically to play in Anakin.
Okay.
Yeah, he was mentioning Shaak Ti, extremely tough. Weequay Pirates, extremely tough. He liked Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding again for that disarm on a stick. Cad Bane, refreshing force. Yeah, he brought this pairing specifically against Anakin. He said he wasn't sure if it was good, but he felt that all the parts together, the sum of it, was potentially something to be good against Anakin.
That's fair. Anything with Obi-2 is going to be a nuisance for Anakin and for Jedi in general. So, like,
yeah,
I can see it.
I think
And in Rebel Commandos on Never Tell Me the Odds, and
Princess Leia getting some revenge attacks in for some damage against clone supports. I can see how the sum of the parts of this works.
He's able to move a couple things here too.
I'm always surprised to see the Weequay Pirates by themselves, because like they are good. It's 9 hit points, steadfast. That by itself would be worth it. But I find they get so much benefit from having other Weequays around that it always catches me off guard when I see them on their own.
Yeah, really cool stuff here, I think, from Scott. Again, somebody who's always brought very creative lists. He was the one that we saw at Dooku Armor. He really championed that list, brought it to Adepticon, and did very well with it. I'm going to hot take here. I think Scott is probably the best player in the game right now.
There's some data to back that up.
There certainly is.
Okay, so also this weekend, we had a 22-player event in Spain. Great turnout, some awesome lists. We saw a whole lot of Republic coming out to play. We've been talking about a pretty high concentration of Republic since Rebalance, and I'd say this is more.
There's so many big foreheads in the top 8. Like, Ki-Adi-Mundi is
a lot
everywhere.
of double brains in the top 8. Yes, 2 brains.
Yeah, so 9 players bringing Ki-Adi-Mundi at 20 games. 7 players bringing Anakin, played in 18 games. 9 players bringing Kenobi at 17 games. And 7 players bringing Hunter at 11 games. We don't hit a non-Republic primary until the Grand Inquisitor at 5 players and 10 games. It was a huge showing for Republic, but Republic did not take the day. We're seeing another Grand Inquisitor list head off an event. Sean, what are we seeing here?
We are seeing Grand Inquisitor Fallen Jedi, Third Sister, Fifth Brother with Moff Gideon, Death Trooper Escort, and Fourth Sister. Double single supports.
I think this is the list for it. If you're going to go double Inquisitor, this is the list.
Yes, yeah, I think so. You got GI for the Force refresh when you're running double Inquisitors, particularly with tiebreakers. Moff Gideon with Long Live the Empire. Death Trooper Escort moves him on his turn. Third Sister can move either of them around. I think you're right. If you're going to do the single supports, you need to go all in with a list like this.
I think Gideon giving them an extra dice on their attack as well makes, isn't quite Vader, but from a support primary, also increasing that output.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a little situational. It has to be attacking into an objective that's held, so it can be a touch situational at times, but overall, this is the way to do it.
I think that's most of the time when you're attacking something that's going to apply.
Yeah. And then one of your favorite primaries here, Kyle, in the second list.
So the winner also took Mandos with Sean's favorite Mandalorian list with the armor and Lord Maul.
Yeah.
Opting to take Gar Saxon and Bo-Katan as the secondaries, which does add some incredible movement to the list overall. It definitely gives it some more reach. We played on the interesting thing was playing on Sabotage here, and that's a place where I think Paz really shines. So it's an interesting choice. Notably, Oscar was list locked into taking the Mandalorian list in the last game because he played Gideon and Grand Inquisitor for the first 3 rounds.
And if you notice too, if you look back at the Atlantic City Open and this event, I think it's all the top Mandalorian lists are playing both core box secondaries.
Was that true on both?
Yes, I believe so. It's this one. And then if you go back, Andrew W., 4th place at Atlantic City Open, also playing Bo-Katan and Gar Saxon.
That's true. That's true.
All armor.
Yeah, I think if I was going the double movement, I'm still
I really enjoy
partial
it.
to Ahsoka.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm going to try more too with Ahsoka Jedi No More with the double core box secondaries. I think she's pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting, and again, we see that twice. I feel like with some meta changes, Paz's stock has gone up. I think he's an awful target for Anakin.
Yeah, having the wound just go away makes Anakin real sad.
He gets to jump back. He's not off the point. It's definitely not what Anakin wants to see, and I think that's reflecting in Anakin's win rates against armor so far. So it's interesting to see where that's going to land meta wise. We also saw for a 4-round event, there is a lot of Hunter in these 3-1 lists.
There's 3 of them in the top 8, and I think each of them was with Kenobi, but I could be wrong. They all had Kenobi in the list, but I don't know if that's how they were played. It's starting to look like it, though, as I scroll through.
We've seen consistently Hunter be more prominent across Europe than over here in North America, and it's really interesting to see different metas shape up. I definitely still think Hunter has some play, but there is a lot of competition in the Republic primary space. Any other thoughts from this event, guys?
I think the Empire takeaway is that there's a lot of different ways to play these control lists. Probably a lot more to be figured out as well too. Do you add Krennic into the equation as well too with any of these? I think we're going to see a bunch of different varieties coming out over the next few months.
Yeah, one thing I will shout out with a lot of Republic being played, it was Kenobi that actually came out with the highest win rate in the Republic list at a 59% win rate with a fair amount of games played.
He's just been so consistent.
He's been just hovering that 60%, and we've seen it consistently, which is a great place to be. All right. Well, let's jump in to the main topic of the episode. Our primary of the week this week, which is Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker.
Great. Yeah, let's cover Luke. I know he doesn't get played a whole lot, so I'm excited to throw down something that's a little bit less popular.
A primary,
I think he is still quite good.
A primary that was actually asked for in our Discord this week.
So, if you want, I can take the ability card and we'll run over that.
Go for it.
So we'll start with he's a 7-point primary, brings 3 Force. He's a Force user, Jedi, and Rebel Alliance. He has a tactic, Return of the Jedi. At the start of this unit's activation, one character in this unit may jump and then refresh a Force. This adds a little bit of extra mobility to him. He makes sure he's never going to be stuck in melee, so his move action is usually going to be good. And having a Force refresh means he is likely to be Force neutral, at least on his turn. All in all, it's pretty useful for your Force economy. Having the jump, I would rather have it on command, but getting it for free is probably the next best option after that. Active ability is you can either profit by this or be destroyed. Costs 1 Force. Choose an active objective within range 2. Each enemy character contesting that objective may dash. Then, one character in this unit may dash towards that objective and may make a 5-dice melee attack. This one I find is very interesting because it gives your opponent a chance to run away or try to dodge you or what have you. When you add elevation into the mix, it can make for some awkward turns, so you want to be very careful to not give your opponent an out if you're trying to get that kill. Sometimes you need the dash just to get on the point. Well, I guess you have to be on the point, but to get to elevation or something. And then at that point, it's worth it. But having your opponent just run away, and especially if it's like a lockdown unit where they get to maintain the point, it can be really tough. On the flip side, Luke has a phenomenal 5-dice attack. So if he gets the attack, it's great because you're just hammering away at someone. Good potential to get 3 down your tree, which is 6 or 5 damage, depending on what side what stance you're on. It can be very strong.
You can either profit by this or be destroyed is an incredible ability.
Mhm.
It's one of Luke's two standout abilities. He loves the extra movement. As long as you can get him to that within two, this can help you get up to a point from an ingress. This can help you get engaged where you need to be. And you're right. He has a solid 5 dice attack. I can tell you from my own experience, that certainly comes with some variance, but he will at least pretty reliably get some shoves in there. For one force, this is going to be worth it, especially with Luke's refresh. This is going to be worth it just about every time. This allows Luke to be able to clear points that have two bodies on them.
Yeah, I will call it though, Titus, I think you're very correct in that this needs to be done in the correct order. And you also need to be able to, like you said, make sure your opponent does not run away. I've had situation in a previous game where I was able to just dash off of a ledge and then Luke wasn't able to attack me at all and then be able to reclaim the point from Luke on my next turn.
It depends what you're going for, because sometimes you want them to run away. It's like Cad Bane's ability where you can say, I win either way because either I get the point or I get to shoot you.
That's fair.
It's the same thing here. Sometimes, like, the ideal version of using that ability is when you like either option. Just be very careful if you need the kill in order to win the struggle or in order to stay in the game, then it might be worth attacking first just to make sure you get at least something out of it.
Yeah, I think order of operation, depending on what you want to do here, is really important.
So Luke has two reactives. The first is deflect. It's the same as any other Jedi that has deflect. After a ranged attack targeting a character in this unit is resolved, this unit may use this ability. If the attack roll contained one or more miss results, the attacking unit suffers 2 damage. It's the Jedi's bread and butter. It seems very minor, but given that it's a free ability, it can add up the damage, because we've seen just recently the difference between 7 and 8 hit points. Well, 6 hit points is even easier to kill. So just adding 2 damage because somebody shot at you, that is very relevant.
Yeah, I think deflect is an ability that we've learned over time just has increased in value as we've all just learned the game better and learned these breakpoints. As, may not have been as relevant when Luke first came out, when we were in a very melee space, but he's got his own tricks there too. But as we've seen the meta turn into more of a ranged attack meta, deflect stocks have just gone up.
It's very good. As always, you want to be careful about if someone gives you strain on their attack tree. Deflect will trigger it because the strain happens before the deflect triggers. Something to keep in mind when you're using it. His other reactive is I will not fight you. This one costs a force. When a character in this unit is targeted by a melee attack, this unit may use this ability. After the attack is resolved, if the attack contained one or more miss results, one character in this unit may heal twice and jump. So it's similar to Riposte, except instead of dealing damage, you're healing and getting a jump, which is amazing. Being able to return to the point is super relevant, and it bypasses any pins or strains or anything that they might have given you because you're healing first. It's like the Death Trooper Escort's reactive, but even better because you can go up elevation, you can go down elevation, you can heal and avoid being pinned. You don't care if you're engaged or anything. It's full freedom to respond to someone that attacked you in melee. And given that we're going into a very melee-centric meta based on the recent results, I think Luke is very well situated with this ability.
I agree. I'm trying to think of a time when playing Luke that I didn't trigger this, and I am pretty certain I would, as long as it's still one force, I would be triggering this every time he's attacked.
His final ability is his identity. I am a Jedi like my father before me. This one recently had a change. So while this unit's order card is in the order deck or in reserve, this unit and allied Rebel Alliance units within range 5 have immunity to expose. While this unit's order card is not in the order deck, this unit and allied Rebel Alliance units within 5 have immunity to pin. Of note, if you are in reserve because you are both in reserve and not in the order deck, you get both. So immunity expose and immunity pin within range 5 of Luke. This was a fairly mediocre ability before because it was just for him. Now that it is range 5 of him, it's similar in function to what Mace does in that you're sending a big bubble of protection to your units, except in this case it's immunity to conditions. Immunity to expose isn't as amazing as it was before because we don't have all the coordinated fire. It's still very relevant. Immunity to pin is very relevant with the 2/12 coming into the fore, also with Ewoks making a surprise comeback. Just a lot of Republic units have pins on their tree, so with the proliferation of clones out there, I think this is a very relevant ability.
It is. Range 5 is such a huge bubble. I think you take Luke in a list as a counter to some specific options. We talked about this with Dark Troopers. I think immunity pin is exceptionally valuable into Republic. I think there's Stormtrooper-based Empire lists. Certainly don't want to see immunity pin. And you mentioned Ewoks. Going in against a list with Freedom Fighter Leia and Ewok Hunters, you've got the ability to turn off both of those coordinated fires.
It's a little dependent on where he is in your deck, but
Sure is.
There's ways to deal with that.
Yeah, and with that, actually, because of this ability, I really like Luke on First Contact now.
I was going to bring that up later.
Nice. Well, I'm sorry to steal your thunder.
That's all right. That's all right.
Because
it's true.
Just being able to put Luke in reserve, have the activation there when you want. I'm looking at some stats right now when we talk mission. Luke currently has an 89% win rate on First Contact.
I'm a little surprised by that, but
that is a low number. That is a low number of games. His overall win percentage is sitting at 51, which is actually improved from before. That's 51% since the rebalance. So we're definitely seeing stocks up a bit on Luke. And I think if you're going like an all Rebels premier list, I think Luke has a spot there because I think there's some certain matchups where you're really going to want to have this ability.
One thing I will say, his immunity bubble is also very relevant against Iden because Iden, one, she exposes people in order to up her her attacks, but also she relies on a double pin in order to deal extra damage. And if she doesn't get that, it drastically lowers her kill potential at least on her 4-step because she can only hit 7 damage instead of 8. And as we keep talking about, that is a big break point right now.
Yeah, and that's a really good call out, Titus. Yeah, because when any dice rely on primary, if Iden flubs, she's usually left standing in the middle of nowhere and feeling sad, right? So you're right. Yeah, the double pin has always been something that I think consensus a lot of people have said that this should not be here, but the ability to take it away I think is a really good call out.
So just as a last little thing, I want to go over his stance cards a little bit. Form 5 Gemso, he has 8 attack dice and he hits like Anakin. It's really what he's doing. He gets a reposition on there, he deals some conditions, but the first 2 steps are just straight damage. So that's where he's basically trying to go for the kill. On the other side, he's got Ceresu. It's a more defensive side. He pushes. He has heals on there. He does have some mobility, not quite as much as the other side, but easy access to pushes are really the name of the game here. And his expertise is slightly better on offense. In general, you'll know which you want in which situation, because either you're going for a kill or you just need to take a point and push someone off. Ceresu, I find, is very useful in combination with you can either profit by this or be destroyed, because that enables you to, even if someone doesn't run away from the point, push them off and then hit someone else and push them off. You can really clear out a point by doubling down on the easy access to pushes. And if somebody just happens to be an easy kill, well, you can go with Gemso and, finish them off.
So it really is that early damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have found that even if you're going for the damage, Ceresu can be a lot more reliable. They both trees actually hit 7 damage on 4 successes. And from my experience, even being a die down on Ceresu, that 7 damage is more reliable on Ceresu than it is on Gemso. You also have the backup plan of those shoves if the attack doesn't get far enough. I think this is where that double attack comes in really relevant, because if you're able to get that bit of a soften up attack into the main attack, I would be keeping Luke and Ceresu.
I do like the reposition on Gemso, though. If you really need to get him across the table, getting one and potentially two with a second attack repositions, as well as the jump from your tactic and a move from your move action, that's a lot of movement.
100%. And I will say, as a really fun fluff piece here, because AMG design on these stance cards continues to really impress. Luke's Gemso side mimics Anakin's identically in shape, and his Ceresu side is Padme's aggressive negotiations tree.
It also has a similar feel to how Obi's Ceresu side works, in that it is very damage and push intensive in one direction and healing in the other, which is a nice touch because he was trained by Obi-Wan.
Yeah. What incredible design, and such an easy thing to just gloss over.
I don't think double shove and a jump is movement to shrug at, though, as well too.
No, it's great.
You know what I mean? Like you still get that damage, double shove and a jump. That he's still boogieing even with that, right?
For sure. I think Ceresu is really his best side, but there are reasons to switch. That's really the hallmark of a well-done stance card, in my opinion. One side might be better than the other, but they both have functions.
Yeah, I've never had an issue with Luke's mobility once he's there. It's getting him there the first time that needs a little help.
Get him off the starting line.
But so in terms of how Luke plays, really he's what I would call in this game a bruiser, because he is tough, but he still hits hard, but he also doesn't really move anyone else. His job is really to go hit one point, clear that out, and then hold the point and make sure no one else can come after him, because he is such a tough target to attack. A lot of people will just choose to avoid that point, and then when he activates again, he goes and does it all over again somewhere else. There's a downside to taking that kind of a unit. Usually you only want one. You probably don't want two primaries that do that, but when they perform amazingly well.
Yeah, I've been happy with Luke on the table. I have played him a few times at a couple of our local events, and honestly have been more impressed than I thought I would be just about every time. He holds a point well. Having an ability if you're shot at, an ability if someone melee attacks you, is just very versatile on your opponent's turn, and he can just be tough.
All right. Do we want to touch on his box at all?
Yeah, so the fearless and inventive box. So this box was actually our introduction to the Rebel Alliance faction when it released, and coming out in a space where there really wasn't much you could do for list building. Luke really was kind of forced into play with his box, as there really wasn't much at the time out yet for him to play with. Even the next couple Rebel Alliance boxes we got were Ewoks, and didn't play particularly well with Luke either. I definitely think it took some time before lists with Luke to really start to figure out where Luke's place was. As you mentioned, he is a selfish primary. He does come with Boosh. Yeah, so this whole box is themed around Jabba's palace from Return of the Jedi. Thematically, it's an incredible box. So we have Boosh, Leia, and then Lando and R2 in disguise as the support. Lando and R2 are nicknamed Bar 2 because we have the bar serving R2 in the box. I think they're an incredible support for a 3 cost. I think they fit in a number of Rebels lists and are something you're really going to want if you're playing Rebel Alliance as a faction or in a premier list. Boosh is not a great secondary. As Titus talked about recently, she does have a place in some bounty hunter focused lists as of recently. I think she's a tough sell in any Rebels list.
She recently got some love in the latest Zion's Finest episode. I think she has, like you said, some particular spots, but yeah, it feels tough in Rebels.
Yeah, there's a couple gimmicky spots where I think she can play a role, but I do think with the Cassian box overall has opened up some options for her. So why don't we talk a little bit about list building with Luke?
I'll start off because I took Luke with just his box. So I have Luke with Boosh and Lando and R2. And then I threw in the Cassian box with Cassian Andor, A2SO, and the Rebel Pathfinders.
Both boxes as is.
Yep. both boxes as is. I know usually I have the crazy ideas, but today I felt like Luke belongs in the Rebel Alliance, and everybody else likes spies in his box. So why not double down and throw it in a box of spies? So Cassian Andor likes Rebel Alliance stuff. He likes spies. K2SO likes Rebel Alliance, likes spies. The Rebel Pathfinders are both of those things and have two bodies, and that's all I can really say about them. I joke, but they are fairly tough and mobile, even if their attacks aren't great, which is really what I'm looking for in this list. The supports are really there to hold points. Boosh is there mostly to give movement, but also has a fairly good Shatterpoint activation with Cassian if need be, and she has diceless displacement even if it's somewhat expensive. So despite her attack expertise not being great, she can perform, maybe not optimally, but in this list, I think she has a very strong place. K2SO is the revenge trigger that deals some damage, is really what he's there for. If a rebel within range 3 of him is wounded, he gets to crack back. If he gets wounded, a spy gets to move, and he also does things. I believe it deals conditions. And in general, it's a tough list to attack into. Cassian has a decent number of hit points, but he's fairly squishy otherwise. But everybody else is tough to attack. And when they do get wounded, you have both K2 cracking back, and you have Cassian moving something. So there's a lot of movement, and I mean, don't attack Luke. That's really the main thing. Luke goes to a point and he holds it because nobody's going to go after him.
And that revenge trigger in this case, being able to move around Luke, like Luke's biggest weakness is kind of if he gets displaced off that point, it can be a while to get him back because Rebels don't have a ton of out of activation movement to be able to just put him back. Being able to also just reposition Luke's bubble around means you're going to be able to clear pins off of your list on a Cassian.
And I should mention, I did take first contact with this mission specifically so that when you Shatterpoint, you can put him in reserve and make that a double immunity bubble that is moving around as you play the game.
Completely agree with that call. That would definitely be where I would lean for the list. Sean, what are you bringing with Luke?
I am bringing lots of fun stuff. So I have Luke with Sabine Wren, Lando, and R2. Second list is Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum, Obi-Wan Kenobi Out of Hiding, and Rebel Commandos. I have this on shifting priorities, but I think there's also something to be said, maybe bringing this on Never Tell Me the Odds. Maybe. I think there's some play there. A couple of things I really like about this. Sabine, obviously being able to move a Rebel, depending on where you are in order deck. She can move either Luke or Ahsoka, who both kind of need a little extra, like we say, off the starting line movement. Lando and R2, we've already sung their praises for a great 3 cost. Tons of movement there. Ahsoka Tano, I think maybe a little bit better on shifting priorities. You know, an advanced double jump gets her to the midline to be able to do what she needs to do. Also with some nice force refresh. Obi-Wan Kenobi, been talking, seeing his praises with a whopping 7 force here. 4 from Ahsoka and 3 from Jedi Luke.
Effectively 8 with Luke's refresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then Ahsoka, hopefully getting, what she uses back. I think that's what you're trying to look for out of Fulcrum, is at least putting her on par with what she's used. Obi-Wan Kenobi Out of Hiding should be able to use Mind Trick here for disarms fairly consistently. And then Rebel Commandos, again, great on Never Tell Me the Odds or grabbing the midline on shifting priorities.
Yeah, I like this list for both mechanical and thematic reasons. Thematically, it's the pairing that I want to see so bad ever since seeing that episode of Book of Boba Fett that had both Luke and Ahsoka just talking about their shared history. I want to see more of that, because if anybody deserves to talk to somebody who knew their father, it's Luke. It's such a good moment, and I wish we could get more of it. In terms of mechanical, I just really like having the 2 really heavy hitters as your primaries, and then kind of shoring that up with a lot of mobility, and Obi-2 obviously making things just really hard to kill.
Yeah, the 2 primaries here definitely tickle my high, I won't say the word aggro because that'll get people asking questions, but 2 very high damage primaries. I like this quite a lot. And again, I am trying to find a good home for Fulcrum. And we've talked in the last couple of casts. She's not doing so hot, but I like her a lot. She's my kind of primary, like Maul and these higher damage primaries. I just, I wish she had a better slot, and she feels good with Luke here.
Yeah, and I like her with OB2. Even her with Cassian and taking OB2, I think is interesting. I think she brings the Force to fuel what he wants to do. I also think in this list, you've got both of your primaries that are very likely to be engaged. So Obi's tactic will be on very frequently, even if you don't need to move Obi.
Yes, yeah, and I think what's interesting too is that since Obi-Wan's moving a character that's engaged on a struggle switch on an activation, he can actually move her closer to a new active objective point, where maybe all she has to do is just jump, focus, attack, and then double attack and get her force back. So he can really help her reposition on a struggle change where she needs to be most effective.
Yeah, I think there's actually a ton of synergy here. Do I think this is, a super competitive list? No, but this would absolutely work on the table.
I think a good player could leverage this very well.
Yeah. I think this is a list that probably needs some reps, and it's got a lot of fun stuff.
All right, I will jump in with my list, and I guess I'm in the tightest spot for the week in terms of something a little off here, but I want to make Luke Skywalker an Ewok. Is where we're going here. So we're building with Freedom Fighter Leia to give Luke that Ewok keyword. With Leia, we're going to go C-3PO and the Rebel Commandos. C-3PO, I think, is doing something really interesting with Luke in particular. Luke can be really hard to deal with from an attack perspective. Being shot and shoved off a point is really one of the main ways to deal with Luke. And 3PO says no. So 3PO is going to be able to give Steadfast to Luke if he's an Ewok. And I think this shores up one of the only options for dealing with Luke outside of diceless displacement. You've got the Rebel Commandos here, which will be Ewoks as well, which have an incredible 5 dice attack from 3PO. We haven't touched on it here, but 3PO at 3 cost with their abilities now. What an incredible secondary. An incredible glow up from a unit that I had never seen on the table. I didn't even bother to build when I put that box together, to now being one of the best in faction secondaries, and I think basically stapled to Freedom Fighter when you play her now.
Yeah, a complete 180 here, like you said, a complete irrelevance to holy moly, like a complete 180 on this unit. It's amazing, and I think it's one of probably, outside of Anakin, the best glow up out of the rebalance.
I think you can make an argument for us saying
from the floor they were at to where they are now, it might be the biggest one.
Yeah.
Anakin was playable before. Not like
that's fair.
Competitively great, but he was playable. C3.
No. So there you go.
That was a shelf model and painted for hobby, which is amazing, and that's exactly what a rebalance is for. On the Luke side, I took Agent Kallus and the Ewok Hunters. So for Kallus here, Leia sharing the Ewok tag across the list allows Kallus to have a tag shared with everybody, which turns a lot of these rerolls from 1 dice to 2. This means everybody in this list is getting 2 rerolls off of Kallus spending a force, which was a lot of his benefit in Spectre lists of getting 2 to 3, and Leia is going to share that across the list. So we're in a great place when it comes to Kallus, and we've got the force here. I don't think anyone's eating up a terrible amount, so we've got the force to be able to spend on those rerolls. And then we've got the Ewok Hunters for coordinated fire pin. So we've got 3 coordinated fires in the list and ability to reroll. So we're going to have some pretty reliable attacks coming out of this list. And Luke's adding a defensive piece that Ewoks aren't so good at on their own.
I love this list. And again, the resurgence of Freedom Fire Leia as well too has been super, super nice to see.
Yeah, the other one I will touch on before we leave Luke list building is if you want to take a good Jedi pairing and not Republic, Luke with Kanan is a great list. It is just miserable to attack into. I think it's Sabine's best spot when it comes to a Spectre list, because Luke certainly appreciates the out of activation movement. Bar 2's in a great spot there, which is what I'd be taking. Probably either Luke with Cassian or Luke with Kanan are probably the two most competitive spots for Luke. You know, and I'm not going to shy. Again, Luke's sitting with, again, a 51% win rate since rebalance with a relatively low amount of games. I'm not going to say Luke is the most competitive primary, but I think, especially if you're going all Rebels, really has a spot in list building, because there's going to be some matchups where Luke is really strong. And we're in a space with some pretty aggressive melee primaries out there, and they do not want to see Luke across the table.
No. One thing I would like to see, and I haven't been able to do it myself, I always scared whenever I go to put it on the table, is I want to make Ki-Adi-Mundi Luke Skywalker work. I feel like there's something there. I don't know what it would be, but if somebody has a list for that they think actually shines, hit me up, because I want to see that.
It would have to be Luke Obi too, right?
I feel like it would. You could make an argument for Ezra, but he doesn't have the Jedi keyword, so like I don't know.
If Ezra had the Jedi keyword, we'd be cooking. Last thing I'll touch on is, Anakin's running around everywhere. Luke's currently sitting with a 73% win rate into Anakin as a call out. So I think we're definitely in a time to test Luke, get him back out on the table. Last week we introduced a contest, and as I said at the start of the cast, thank you to everyone who jumped in and participated, shared those mace lists. By the time this episode is going out, we'll likely have posted about the winners in the Discord, so congrats to those that have won. But we'll be pulling that closer to launch of this episode.
Mace ×2.
I imagine we'll be announcing it on the next episode as well. We'll let everyone know who won.
Absolutely. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah, just thanks everybody for listening. As always, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube. I actually put out in the Discord today a request for some reviews and some comments and all that kind of stuff. So if you can help us out, then one of the biggest things, without monetary, we're not doing a Patreon or anything like that, is to rate, like, subscribe, comment on the episodes, because there could be some interesting stuff happening soon for us.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.